I would like to call the Finance and Ways and Means Committee to order for February 3rd, 2026. Madam Clerk, please open the board for roll call. Members, please make sure you are signed in so we can take the roll. Welcome back. Quieten down there, Mr. Faison. All right. Has everyone registered their attendance for today? Does anyone need more time? Oh. Thank you. All right, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Chairman, you have 21 members present. You have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. Members, are there any personal orders or announcements before we begin? Speaker Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, if we could keep Representative Grills and his family in our prayers. He left a few minutes ago. It looks like his father-in-law is going to be called home. So if we could pray for Chrissy specifically and the loss of her dad and their family, and just safety for Representative Grills as he tries to get back to see his father-in-law one last time. Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you, if we could just pray for him quickly.
Please.
Father, we love you. Thank you for how you love us, Lord. There's a time and a season, and it sounds like for the Grills family, there's a time now where his father-in-law, Bruce Bennett, is going to be called home. So thank you, Lord, that he knows Jesus in a personal way. Thank you that his eternal salvation is secure, Lord. Pray for Rusty as he drives. Give him traveling safety. Be with Christy and their entire family, Lord, as they deal with a loss. Thank you for how you love us, Lord. Thank you that we can have security and knowing where we'll spend eternity, Lord, of the personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Lord, we love you in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for this. Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to recognize a good friend of mine and who happens to be the Covington Police Chief, Donna Turner, in the audience. Thank you.
All right. Any other announcements or personal orders? Hearing none and seeing none. We do have 3 hearings for today. We are going to begin with F&A, and we'll follow that up by the treasurer. And then lastly, we will hear from TWRA. So before the presentation begins, are there any objection to going out of session? Hearing none and seeing none, we are now out of session. I'm going to ask the Department of Finance Administration. We do have Commissioner Bryson and his team. We'll ask you all to come up. Please identify yourself as you begin speaking, and we will control the microphones up here. So if you'll just wait until the red light comes on, and then you will be ready to go. Members, all the information should be on the dashboard that we'll be seeing, the presentation as well as budget documents. Also, members, if you have any questions at the end of the presentation, please go ahead and signal that to me or my staff up here, and we'll get you on the list. So without further ado, Commissioner Bryson, thank you for being here today. Please begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is good to be here with you all. It is the joy of my life to be in front of you all today, and we're glad to be here. But we are glad to be here to be able to do a presentation of the budget today, the budget recommendation to the General Assembly. I have with me Director David Thurman and Assistant Director Alex Schuman of the Budget Office, and so we will all be here to answer whatever questions that you may have. So we'll get started with our presentation. As we go through, we will have some specifics, but we'll also have a lot of highlights. Since this is the 8th year of this administration, we will also show some trends and some things that have happened over the last 8 years. Some of you who have been here a lot longer than that will recognize that this is not the only snapshot in time. It is just one that we chose because of where we are. So we'll move on and get started with talk a little bit about the economy. Broadly, because that's how our budget begins. Broadly, the economy continues at a moderate clip. Growth projections from the State Funding Board prescribe about a 2.35% growth in state tax revenue for FY27. Generally, we think of 3 to 5% as being somewhere close to normal. So I would characterize this as moderately slow revenue growth. Largely, economic indicators remain good with some caveats. According to most economists, we will have a low chance of recession next year. I believe it was it Tasser that reported earlier that they see less than a 25% chance of recession. So we expect the economy to continue to grow at a slow to moderate clip. As sales tax dominant state, we continue to watch consumer spending. because that does affect our revenue, and we'll watch that. There are some concerns, but we'll watch it carefully. A little bit of context for where we have been and where we are. Many of you that have been around for the last 8 years know that when we first experienced some of the COVID shocks, we thought we were going to lose a lot of revenue. And indeed, what happened was we actually gained a lot of revenue over about 3 years. And it has been an extraordinary 3 years. We grew a lot, and now we are in a period of moderate growth, as we discussed just a moment ago. The high growth years were particularly challenged, but we realized something, that the secret to success is often how you manage in the high growth years, more so even than in the low growth years. And the General Assembly wisely channeled billions of recurring dollars to non-recurring expenses. Many states also experienced the rapid growth that we saw, but they did not handle it this way. Many of them invested in more operating and programs and recurring expenses. Many of them, when the budget slowed down, as it has now, budget growth slowed, they're experiencing budget crises. Saw over the weekend that California is expecting an $18 billion budget deficit. Not so in Tennessee. We are in fine shape. Our budget remains solid because we invested a lot of those early years. We invested in non-recurring items such as roads, TCATs, higher education, water and sewer lines, and other investments. So these are the reasons why Tennessee remains a low-tax state, maintains a AAA credit rating, and is continually ranked as one of the very best managed states in America. So where are we today? These are numbers as of the end of December, which is the fifth month in this current budget year, and we are doing fine. We are tracking about $117 million through December, above our budget anticipations. I just looked at some more recent numbers after the past couple of days, and we're at about $135 million above our budget estimates. So we are in good shape, and we will and if these trends continue, we will end FY26 in good shape. So let's move on to budget highlights. Let's talk about the general fund. As you can see, overall, we have about $2.5 to $2.6 billion available in the general fund. That is made up of several components. One of those are the $491 in recurring dollars that in FY26 were spent on non-recurring expenses. So these are essentially last year's dollars that we spent non-recurring. So we have them again this year to come up in our budget. We have closing balances for FY25 and 26 of approximately $1.7 billion, and expected revenue growth, the 2.35% that the funding board authorized of $419 million that we talked about earlier. That brings our total revenues to about $2.5 billion. I'm going to talk in a minute about some reductions. We've done some reductions and created some more space. And there's about $2.2 billion in cost increases, as well as some capital that we will also cover later and some transfers that we will also cover. So that is the basic structure of our budget, but we'll begin to get into some specifics. First, I really want to brag for a minute on our agencies and on our budget team. We did some extra work this year on right-sizing our budget and looking for places where we can actually find more dollars. And the agency submitted 1% budget reductions. The vast majority of them were accepted, and which added about $100 million to our budget than what we have available. The budget team reviewed reserves across the state, found reserves that were no longer needed, and returned over $200 million to the general fund from some of those reserves. And this year, for several years, we've been talking about utilizing vacant positions more. And what we have seen this year is that the agencies are being very sure about making sure that they use their vacant positions. If they need a position over here, they're moving it from somewhere else and using those positions. Also, the budget team looked at positions and eliminated 67 long-term positions, saving about $2 million annually. When you kind of add all of that up, the executive branch is down about 350 or so positions, and that doesn't count the over 700 positions that we have intentionally created for our state troopers and our Highway Patrol and our Homeland Security and TBI. We'll talk about all that in a minute. So let's talk about base issues. These are things that have to be dealt with before we can work on other items in the budget. And so these are the things the budget team calls have-tos. These are things that we really have to do. And so you see through here, the first one is that we expect about a 2% inflation and utilization increase for TennCare MCOs, costing the general fund about $89 million. The federal government is reducing the FMAP, which is their TennCare match rate, costing the state an additional about $89 million. TennCare cost will increase for Medicare and pharmacy, also reducing in cost increases of about $36 million. And then the feds are also requiring us to pick up another 25% of our SNAP administration costs. These are not the benefits, these are the administration costs. And we expect this to be about $58 million in FY27. This budget also includes significant funding for DCS to catch up on expenditures to better serve children in state custody. Altogether, these are about $326 million that comes off the top before we get into other requests for funding. Next item on our agenda here is going to be to talk about K-12 public education. For the 8th consecutive year, we propose adding more funding for K-12 public education. Over the past 8 budget cycles, funding for K-12 public education through what was BEP and is now TISA has increased by $2.3 billion on a recurring basis. This is nearly 50% more state funding for public schools each year from now on than was available to them just 8 years ago. This General Assembly and the administration have demonstrated a deep and lasting commitment to Tennessee's public education. Some of the specifics for this year, we recommend $339 million be allocated for public education. This includes an increase in TISA of $250 million. Last year, we overfunded TISA by about $80 million. And so we're going to add those funds to another $170 million from this year's revenues to reach our TISA funding goal of $250 million. With this TISA funding, I'm really proud to say that we will have achieved our goal to raise starting teacher salaries to $50,000 a year. This is 8 years ago, the teachers earned $35,000 a year. So this is a $15,000 or a 42% increase in starting teacher pay since we started this commitment several years ago. Our education strategies are working. You heard the governor talk about some of those last night. Tennessee has more grade A schools this year than last year. So we are adding $11 million to the FY26 budget to fund these ever improving schools. You can see we also added additional funding for charter schools, summer camps, and school construction grants. You'll be interested to know that we also included funding for 43 additional school-based behavioral health liaison who will join the 400 that are already funded in the base budget. Last year, the General Assembly passed education freedom so parents can choose where their kids go to school. Demand was great. All 20,000 scholarships were awarded and families were placed on a waiting list. This year, demand remains high with over 52,000 applicants. Over 35,000 of those are new this year. Of the new applicants, over 16,000 are lower income families looking for a better option for their children. This budget makes 20,000 more slots available so parents can choose the best schools for their kids. We'll move on to higher education. The last 8 years have been difficult times for higher education. During the pandemic, enrollment dropped significantly. Our colleges and universities have worked diligently to reverse that trend and have now recovered to pre-pandemic levels. Throughout these enrollments ups and downs, the General Assembly and this administration have consistently supported our colleges and universities by increasing funding each and every year. The national average for this time period is 38% funding growth, yet the General Assembly has grown higher education funding by 60% over this time. This year, we continue our funding growth for higher education with $83 million in operational funding for increased salaries, benefits, and specific investments in corrections education. We also propose $505 million in capital funding, and I'll detail that on a later slide and give you some detail there. Next, we'll talk about public safety, especially road troopers, which has been a priority for the General Assembly and this administration for several years. This year, we propose an additional 50 road troopers for the Department of Safety. This continues an initiative to improve the ability of the Highway Patrol to keep Tennesseans safe. With these positions, we will have increased the number of troopers by 63% since FY21, and that's a total of 422 troopers added to our Tennessee Highway Patrol. This number is slightly different than the number the governor talked about, 1,300 last night, because 1,300 are total number of uniformed personnel. These are the number of troopers actually on the roads every day. That's the difference in those numbers. Law and safety, $160 million total, because the focus on safety and service does not stop with simply adding more troopers. This budget includes almost $20 million to ensure that our troopers are some of the best paid in the region. That way, Tennessee will continue to be able to attract the best law enforcement professionals anywhere. TBI is also crucial to our state's crime-fighting ability. We've added a rapid DNA capacity and additional support for TBI to investigate crimes. Driver services staffing will be increased to improve service times across the state. Finally, we recommend $80 million in safety grants to improve $80 million in safety grants to support the Memphis Safe initiative. This appropriation is broken into 3 grant programs. $50 million to continue this downtown safety grant program, which you initiated last year. $15 million to reduce violent crime and its impact through evidence-based crime deterrence programs and promoting the effective victim safety and support. And $15 million to support workforce development programs, employment, and economic stability for adults and high-risk youth. We'll turn our attention to our roads and infrastructure. Tennesseans have long been rightfully proud of our road system, but our roads and bridges are aging and need more repair than the gas tax can provide. Over the past 3 years, this administration and the General Assembly have stepped up to allocate more than $4.3 billion additional dollars to help reduce the project backlog. This year, we recommend another $400 million non-recurring toward that backlog. Also, you will recall the General Assembly redirected revenue from tire sales to transportation. We will continue to build on that commitment with another $25 million of recurring funds from the general fund. We recognize that this may not be enough, but it builds on the General Assembly's action last year and is a move in the right direction. We have also supported our aviation as well. We've had, for several years now, we have continued to fund $50 million annually to help our 77 general aviation airports, and we will do that again. We have been on a 5-year plan to increase funding for commercial airports to a total of $125 million. This budget attains that goal. These airports drive tremendous economic growth, and this funding has been crucial to their expansion to grow our economy and provide better air service to Tennesseans. Nuclear energy is a feature of every serious plan to provide sufficient energy to Tennessee for the future. Tennessee has been a thought leader on nuclear energy since the 1940s. Now Tennessee is becoming the nation's leader in nuclear technology and nuclear industry. The Nuclear Fund, first established in FY24, has helped put Tennessee at the forefront nationally. We recommend recharging that fund with $25 million non-recurring. Also, any growth industry must grow skilled workers. We recommend $10 million to fund grants to higher education to train our nuclear workforce. Specifically, we also recommend $1.5 million for a next generation academy for nuclear technology at Tennessee Tech. Rural has been important to this administration, and it continues to be. So we will continue to fund the rural development grants. It is for $25,000, an ECD rural grant programs like 3-Star, Main Street, and others. Ag launch grants will support the development of agricultural technologies in rural communities. And this is probably a good place to mention the recent news that the federal government has awarded Tennessee $207 million to fund our rural health plan. This is the first of a 5-year federal appropriation that could transform healthcare in rural Tennessee. To be able to use these funds immediately, we plan to present it as a supplemental to the FY26 budget. The world and state government are becoming more and more dependent on technology. Wise technology investments are extremely important as we shape state government for the future. First, it is time to replace Edison. Edison is our enterprise-wide software that operates basic functions of government such as HR, accounting, payroll, and many other functions. However, Edison is over 20 years old. For context, Edison was started in the state before the iPhone was invented. So that's what we are replacing. We need an Edison for the future. It will be expensive. This $70 million is a down payment. Additional funding will be needed once we know the final cost. Last year, the General Assembly provided funds to begin relocating and upgrading the North Data Center. The $20 million in this budget will allow us to finish the job and vacate the property. The federal government is also requiring all states to make public-facing documents meet accessibility standards. This accessibility software will help us better serve citizens and comply with those federal requirements. Like Edison, our court system badly needs upgraded technology. This court technology initiative will connect every courthouse in the state to streamline operations for our judicial system. And finally, quantum. Quantum is a revolutionary new technology that will transform computing, and Tennessee can lead the nation. This $20 million is an investment in a quantum backbone network to connect existing and future quantum users across the state. Such a network would greatly accelerate quantum research and investment and advance Tennessee's already strong leadership in next generation computing. We can't talk about technology without including artificial intelligence. AI is a technology that will fundamentally transform the workplace and therefore how citizens expect government to serve them. 2 years ago, this General Assembly established the AI Advisory Council. Its first report was published in December, and that council report confirms AI is no longer emerging. It is here, and it is here to stay. We must invest now with 3 goals in mind. First, implement AI to deliver government services where and how our citizens demand. Government's AI is being implemented at Amazon and Google, your local grocery store and restaurant. Once citizens begin to use it, they're going to expect their state to have the same types of services, and so we need to be able to do that. Second, we need to transform our information processing to drive more efficient government and more informed decisions. We must use AI to make state government better, faster, and cheaper. Third, we must relentlessly manage and reduce risk to data, technology infrastructure, state employees, and our citizens. We must use AI, but we must use it responsibly. In short, AI strategy is about 3 things: services, data, and risk. This budget request includes $50 million non-recurring to manage service, data, and risk with 4 AI components. First, we must build the AI infrastructure to control and securely manage platforms. Second, we must manage and reduce risk through strong and effective governance policies, risk management procedures, and specialized hardware and software to reduce risk. Third, high-value AI must be implemented. We already have multiple AI solutions waiting to be developed, but we need to have the funding to be able to do so. Fourth, we must be able to keep pace with rapid change. Budgeting is an annual process, but AI is literally changing weekly. Moving AI forward cannot wait on annual budget reviews. Tennessee must have a reserve to respond to a changing landscape between now and the next budget cycle. AI is transforming our organization at a pace we have never seen. This is a big ask, but AI is coming and it is here. Doing nothing will increase cost, create fragmented AI experimentation, and increase risks. This budget will set Tennessee up for success. All right, let's talk about capital for just a moment. Our capital budget includes $505 million for higher education. This is highlighted by funding for a new UT Health Sciences Center. This would be in Memphis. There are also significant projects for the University of Memphis, ETSU, and UT Martin. Importantly, we propose a total of $71 $6.7 million in higher education maintenance funding. This is an additional $22 million for maintenance over and above the base maintenance amount. Capital investments for other state buildings total $517 million. These include a project to re-envision, renovate, and replace welcome centers and rest areas. We also include funding to support the Army Aviation move to Smyrna so they can expand and allow the Nashville Airport to expand into their current space. This TAC capital also completes our state parks commitment with one new state park in East Tennessee and one in West Tennessee. This funding also includes the money to rebuild David Crockett Birthplace State Park in Greenville that was wiped out by Hurricane Helene. Additional funding will renovate the Columbia Driver Service Center, add a slaughter facility at York, improve our veteran cemeteries, and demolish the existing state crime lab when the new one is completed later this year. Just quickly, an overview of capital funding. The General Assembly and this administration have made unprecedented investments in Tennessee's future by investing in infrastructure and capital. I mentioned a moment ago that we have invested more than $4.3 billion in our road system, over and above normal funding streams. This chart shows that we have invested an additional $9.6 billion in state and capital higher education capital needs. These funds were available because we chose to invest rather than spend in the high growth years. We put billions in recurring funds into non-recurring investments in Tennessee's future. This is significant, but it does not tell the whole story. We also directed billions of dollars in federal funds during the COVID era to capital and infrastructure. In all, you have invested an unprecedented $18.5 billion in capital and infrastructure in the last 8 years with very little debt and no tax increases. This has been significant. These investments will pay off for decades to come. This is yet another reason why Tennessee has a very bright future. Through it all, we have never neglected our rainy day fund. Since FY19, the rainy day fund has grown by 250%. The General Assembly has added to this fund each and every one of the past 8 years. This year, we propose continuing that trend with $20 million more dollars to be saved for a rainy day. And so when we total these items and many others, we find that our total budget will actually be down 9.6%. That's about $6.2 billion. Nearly all of this decrease are the federal funds that were received in previous years and are being spent down. As you can see, that is the line that is shown to the decrease. All the other lines are pretty flat or slightly up. In many ways, this budget is a fitting tribute to the historic partnership between this administration and the General Assembly. Even though growth has slowed and overall revenues are down, this budget is balanced and focuses on core government services such as education, infrastructure, public safety, and health. It maintains a low debt burden and once again invests in reserves for a rainy day. It is a conservative budget for a conservative people. I've covered a lot that has been accomplished, but I have barely scratched the surface. I did not mention successes such as the TennCare waiver, billions in economic development, driving down the poverty rate, 14 new state parks, and many, many other accomplishments over the past 8 years. These years have been historic. Thank you for your partnership. Serving the citizens of Tennessee alongside you has been a true honor. Before I close, there is one other statistic that I would like to share. In budget presentations, we talk a lot about spending. We have accomplished much for the people of Tennessee. But you can be proud that over the past 8 years, this General Assembly has voted and implemented over $3.2 billion in tax reductions for the people of Tennessee. This is what good, conservative, and effective government looks like. Thank you so much for the opportunity to serve with you, and we are here and available to answer whatever questions that you might have.
All right, Commissioner, thank you very much for your presentation. We do have several people on the list right now, and I'm sure we'll have more as we go. I want to jump back, and we'll just dive right into this, but I want to go back to on page A137 or on your slide, slide 23. We talk about some of the capital budgets that we see here, and one is the College of Medicine building. And so capital, let's say, I think a $311 million for this, and then a capital budget also shows that UT will obtain $29 million in TSSBA bonds for this building. Last year, we talked a lot about bonding. And so one of the things was the reason we're able to bond higher ed was because they were revenue generating buildings. Yet we see this particular project, and I'm just curious, has that rule changed or what has changed that now we're seeing us bond this particular, that we're even able to do this? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this is a $350 million project. The University of Tennessee expects to come up with 29 million of those dollars. And the state is going to be paying for 311 million at the end of the day, and we plan to bond those with general obligation bonds. The University of Tennessee may use I'm not exactly sure how they're doing that, but they may be using the new bonding authority that they have to be able to bond non-revenue producing facilities up to a certain amount, up to about, I think it's 3% of their total revenues.
Okay. So the state is allowed to do that, even with the 311 million. So even that's allowed.
Yeah, we can. That's what general obligation bonds.
Okay. Then the other question I've got deals with the team and the non-team act raises. What percentage is that of those raises? What?
The P for P?
Yeah.
1.5%.
Okay. I'm sure I'll have more questions as we move along, but I'll stop there for right now. Let's go to Chairman Williams. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner and staff, for being here today. I too have a bunch of questions, but I'm going to try to limit and then some other people can talk. But I noticed in the miscellaneous appropriation, there was $10 million for retirement benefits for state employees. Is that going to be a proposed revision to the current retirement, or is it maybe a shortfall that we had as it related to people's expectation as far as investing in that retirement?
So each year, the treasurer has an actuary study that takes a look at that and determines what is needed to continue the fully funding of the pension. And so based on that, we work with them to kind of figure out the fund mix. And it's a result of that. It's about additional dollars. It doesn't change. The program is just fully funding our obligation.
Okay, if we did do, for those that don't know, that's David Thurman. You just didn't say your name first, in case people didn't know that.
Sorry.
The reason why I asked that is because this General Assembly, along with the governor, we made more than $450 million contributions into OPEB and post-employment benefits for our state employees to make sure that the promise that we gave to them was there whenever they needed it most. I guess my question is, would this be akin to that kind of money to try to keep us at a point where we're fully funded, or?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I also had a question on page B160. You mentioned earlier, several members of this body had an opportunity to hear the administration's presentation on the rural transformation application that we did to the federal government over a 5-year period, $1 billion. In that line item, you mentioned earlier about $125 million that we'd be spending non-recurring dollars for rural health transformation. One of the questions, as a rural member, one of the questions that kind of begs still an answer regarding the rural transformation application was, what is rural? There wasn't really a clear defined understanding what rural meant as a rural legislator who is in desperate need of health care in his community. My question is, are there stipulations on this additional $125 million non-recurring that money will actually be spent in rural communities across the state? We won't find out later that 100 of the $125 million was spent in Williamson, Davidson counties.
Yeah, thank you. We don't have a definition of rural here with us, but we can talk to the Department of Health and work with them to get you the information that you're looking for on where those funds will be distributed.
So right now it's more of a plug of dollars that we want to invest in a similar fashion to what we're currently doing in that application.
There's a rural health plan that we're trying to follow that we've put together a couple of years ago, I believe, and we're using these funds to kind of continue that.
Well, one of the challenges with the Rural Health Transformation Act and our consequent application is that there was a very small amount of money of that $1 billion that could be spent on capital. Is the expectation that these $125 million non-recurring revenues could be spent on capital, unlike the application that we previously had?
So I think I believe the federal money that's coming in is a different slug of money than this.
Agreed.
Right.
But in that application for rural transformation, in your discussion, you were telling us that this would be spent to supplant those federal dollars, this $125 million. My question is, can this be spent on capital in rural parts of the state as defined by it?
You know what's on that? I'm not following.
So
If
So,
you,
so I
David
would,
Thurman.
yeah, Dave Thurman. I would defer to Tink here, but I think the way it was presented is it is to be used for capital.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
For the reason you explained is that the federal dollars could not be.
Right. Okay. One other question. Last year, we issued bonds for the first time in a long time as it relates to how we were funding capital projects. Chairman Hicks asked about the $311 million. I completely understand the reasoning why we're doing that. That project, UT Health Science Center, is as much a workforce development project as it is a healthcare delivery project because they're in such dire need of it. So spending the money even through bonds in order to do that. My question is why would we go to the effort of issuing bonds only for the $311 million when we have $60 million ETSU that we've done in the past for our higher education? I'm sorry, $60 million at University of Memphis, $20 million at ETSU, another $3.4 million at UT Martin, $146 million in state parks, and another $125 million elsewhere. What was the determining factor of why only bond that one project and not the remaining projects, since we're going through the effort of doing that? And we do have, in fact, a lot of bond room even after that calculation.
Yes, thank you. And to your point, we do have a lot of bond room. We are a very low debt state, so we have a lot of bond space. Where the issue becomes with two issues. One is how much debt do we want to take, obviously, and that's just a question we have to ask ourselves. But the real limiting factor often is recurring money, because what we do is we always make sure that we budget the recurring dollars for the bond service, and that's 11% a year that we budget for bond service. So if we bond $1 billion, let's say, then we have to put $110 million into the budget recurring in order to fund that. Often those are more restrictive than the actual bond amount itself.
Okay. Thank you. Chairman, I'll let somebody else.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Next on the list, Vice Chair Gillespie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, thank you so much for being here. I've got several questions here, so bear with me. First, in the budget that was released yesterday on page B328 on the Tennessee Housing Development Agency Starting Home Revolving Fund, can you just give us some details about that? I know it's rural based, but there's $30 million in there. Could you just kind of give a very brief synopsis of that and why that's needed?
Yeah, so this is to address housing affordability in our state. This is a program that was included as $60 million in our budget last year. It didn't make it through the process. And so we're looking at doing that again. I don't remember all the specifics of the program, and I don't know if anybody here does, but we can get you the specifics of how that works.
Chairman, please, that'd be great.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Happy to do that.
Also, switching gears a little bit, on page A10 of the budget, under vape and hip tax revenues, I've just been hearing a lot of different things there in that space, in the hemp and vape bills and the collections that we're getting. Can you just kind of walk us through that and where that is right now? Because I know there's been a lot of legislation that's been in that area in the last year.
Can you walk them through? You know what you're talking about?
Yeah. All right, we'll tag team this. So the question, I'm not sure is, so obviously the two bills were passed last year. In the legislation that passed, I think this is what you're asking, the revenue that's generated in the first year is set aside for legislative appropriation. And so we have done that. We tried to follow the fiscal note for both. I think one is 17 and one was 50 years, 55. What we've learned after the bill was enacted, that there's on the hemp has a slower ramp up, a little bit of a delay in when those revenues will be coming in, and information that we got from revenue from the Attorney General's office. I think maybe ABC, that there's a delay in when those dollars revenue would start to come in. So in the budget, we've adjusted to reflect a lower amount from that revenue stream, still setting it aside, but at a lower amount.
Chairman Gillespie.
Thank you. So wait, you're saying that this is a best guess of the revenue that you're still waiting on that's delayed?
Yes. So, so it's being collected now. I think the vape is kind of tracking to the fiscal note estimate. The hemp has a January 1 effective date in the bill, but then there's a delay of when that actually was going to start to occur because of additional conversations, again, with the Attorney General's office and others. And so we have reflected that lower estimate, and I don't know how that is revenues coming in at this point, but we have set that aside for the legislature.
Thank you. One more, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Gillespie, you're recognized.
Thank you so much. Switching gears a little bit, and I don't know what slide this was on, but it was under the court technology improvements for statewide courts. I was just curious because Shelby County has we consistently ask for data, and the data just is not there. And there's not the computers, I guess, don't talk to the juvenile courts and the adult courts, and they can't talk with the different counties surrounding us. Will this fix that? And also, is this mandatory for all counties to participate in?
So my understanding is that it is offered but not mandatory. That's my understanding. I'm not up to speed with the details of this, but I believe it will interconnect all of those systems potentially if they are connected together. And that's the idea, because apparently their system is antiquated and they really need some additional connectivity, as you're implying.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Next on the list is Representative Parkinson. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner, and to the team. The public safety grants, can you remind me, how much was it again, specifically for Memphis?
80 million.
80 million. And can you tell me how those grants are to be administered and who they're to be administered through?
So they will be administered through the Office of Criminal Justice Programs in the Department of F&A.
Mhm.
So who have been administering all of these criminal justice grants and have a lot of experience doing that in the past. The grants are I can give you a high level, and I can get you more detail later. At a very high level, the downtown safety grants will be used to implement crime deterrence technology, location-based strategies, and capacity building. And they're going to be very similar to the downtown safety grant that were issued last year to Memphis. There's a $15 million to reduce violent crime and its impact through evidence-based crime deterrence programs and promoting effective victim safety and support. And then $15 million for workforce development programs.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. So the grants that are in motion right now came through the Downtown Memphis Commission. Will these grants come through Downtown Memphis Commission? Will some of them also be allocated to City Council? And I believe a portion of it was Sheriff Department, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure of those details, but we can get that to you.
And last question, are these reimbursable grants, or so does there have to be an outlay of?
So I
money?
believe the downtown safety grants, the 50 million, is not reimbursable to my recollection. I think the other two may be. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But again, we'll get you that information.
Okay, great.
On the specifics.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
happy to do it.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Chairman Hogg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, team, thank you all very much. I appreciate that. Go figure, I want to go to slide number 17 and talk a bit about transportation. I appreciate the investment there as we're 17. Yeah, slide number 17 as we're talking about transportation. The non-recurring amount is good again, and I want to thank you. I just want to remind our colleagues that we have, as you stated, $4.3 billion over the last 3 budget cycles between the Modernization Act and current year's investment in that. Would love to see those dollars become recurring. Maybe just a little bit of your thought process as we're vying between recurring and non-recurring on this particular stream, if you could, Chairman.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. So we put recurring money in here. It's small, $25 million. But the idea was there's never been general fund recurring dollars until the tire tax that you all did last year. There's never been that, to my knowledge, there's never been recurring funding out of the general fund to our program. So part of this is kind of breaking that seal, so to speak, and getting this started. What we want to do is we want to put some recurring money in there. We're limited because we have a lot of different things that we need to do. But if we can get this started and begin to get people accustomed to the fact that we can put recurring funding into our road system, then we can begin to build on that and begin to do more in the future.
Chairman Hall.
And thank you. And I'm reminded of a quote from Bum Phillips. And the Houston Oilers team before they became the Titans team, when he was talking about making the playoffs, and instead of breaking that seal, let's break that door down and let's give us an opportunity to create that in a recurring basis. I think that where we have made some really good decisions with our transportation funding over the last 3 years, we've been able to help fund the recovery of Hurricane Helene in Northeast Tennessee with cash because we've had those dollars available for transportation, as well as fund the bridge project in Shelby County, Memphis, going into Arkansas. We've had those $250 million funds to match the federal funds and Arkansas funds to be able to do that. So I think looking at that figure in the days ahead as a recurring figure would be wise with this legislative body. I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize Governor Lee in his statements last night. David Crockett is about to celebrate his 240th birthday, and his thoughts and memory are alive and well in the state of Tennessee as we work toward our statue program here on the Capitol grounds across the street, as well as the rebirth of David Crockett Birthplace State Park, a park that was essentially washed off the face of the earth. And we are coming in with a master plan to rebuild and rebirth the Birthplace State Park in a very thoughtful and important way. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, Chairman and members.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Hawk. Next on the list, Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner. Thank you and your staff for your presentation. I'm going to look at slide 14. I know that the state has made tremendous strides in making sure that Tennessee State University has its land grant match going forward. My question is this $1 million, is this recurring or 1 year? It's recurring. Is this designed to keep pace with any federal increases in land grant funding for Tennessee State?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So the federal government reallocated some federal dollars, and so this is to the state dollars appropriated to address that increase in match.
Okay, and this is designed to make sure that, again, we stay in compliance and don't fall behind in getting the one-to-one match going forward. Do you know exactly how much that increase was, or was it $1 million? Or
I don't recall.
this gives us some cushion, though, right?
Maybe a little. I don't know a lot of cushion, but some cushion.
Okay.
Yes, sir, Representative.
Do we need more
Love.
cushion?
I'm sorry.
Do we need more cushion? Probably, maybe. I'll say it. Okay, we need more cushion. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Love. Next on the list, Representative Gant, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, thank you and your team for being here. I may have missed it, but is there any school safety money in this budget?
I don't believe so. No,
None whatsoever.
not specifically.
I think I'd be sure to say there's no additional. There is certainly security money is in there, but maybe additional. I want to make sure that's clear. I don't want anybody to say there's no security money in the budget. There's no additional, I think, is what the answer would be to that.
That's correct. There's not any improvements in the budget related to that.
Okay, can you point me to it?
If it's there, it'll be in the base budget, and we can have somebody bring it to you and show you what's there.
Okay, so we don't know specifically any school safety money per se that's specifically in the budget.
Well, it would be what was appropriated in prior budgets that's still there.
Well,
We
let
can
me,
get that for you.
let me rephrase my question. Is there any new school safety money in this budget?
No.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And just to make sure we're clear on that as well, because now a lot of those safety grants were actually built into the TISA funding formula. So that's the other thing to sort of kind of remember on that as well. Those are not as specific grants as they used to be. It's all baked in now. So some folks will get some additional funding on that. You're recognized, Representative Gant.
One other question. The 80 million that we appropriated in the last budget for school safety, has it already been expended?
We can find out about that. I doubt that it's all been expended just because money wasn't available until July. And so, but we can get the status of that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
And Commissioner, if you would just get that back to my office and I'll make sure that everyone, that is a very important topic. So I'll make sure everyone gets that.
Be glad
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Next on the list, Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here. Appreciate your presentation. On page 11 of your presentation where it talks about education, K-12 education, and talking about the TISA formula, the recommended appropriation for this year is about 2%. Is that correct? For the improvements on TISA formula?
It is, I think it's a little more than that. I haven't done the
Because I'm
percentage.
thinking that the,
I haven't done the percentage, so
okay,
I'm not sure,
the,
but I think it's a little more.
The inflation rate is about 3. So I'm trying to see how the increase compares with what
Well, okay,
inflation
so
actually is.
Then I can address that.
Okay.
So on the total numbers, haven't done that, but we have looked at the cost that the Education Department recommends on per student funding, and that's up about 3.2% per student. And so so schools will get essentially on a per student on the TISA base about a 3.2% increase in funding.
Okay, I was thinking we may be at a disadvantage with the inflation rate. So thank you, I appreciate that. Can we go back to the highway fund as well? I really appreciate, like Chairman Hawk said, we've done a lot to try to improve that. We all get calls every year about funding for, highways and bridges and the like. Is the executive looking at like a long-term solution to how we can address this? I know it's some stuff this year that we're planning to do, and we did the 10-year plan, and I appreciate that from last year with the modernization. But we have got to figure out how we're going to continue to fund roads in this state since we don't bond the things that we take pride in not doing. But what is the executive doing or planning for long-term solution to what we're dealing with?
Right. And I'm sure, and I think this is what Chairman Hawk was referring to. There are a lot of proposals in the General Assembly for beginning to address this. Over the last 3 years or so, we put probably close to $5 billion total into additional funding. So we have been very cognizant of this. A couple of other things that are structural that probably should be raised on this point is that the Department of Transportation has done a lot internally to run projects through faster so that they don't incur all of the construction inflation that they might have done. And that makes the projects a little bit cheaper so we can do more projects with the same amount of money. So that's been one structural change. The other structural change is choice lanes. Choice lanes are going to be able to do some work for us that won't cost state dollars and will free up literally billions of dollars to take care of to help with some of this backlog. So those are some of the structural things that we have done. There are also funding proposals that are out there. I know that the General Assembly will probably be talking about this year, I would imagine. But it's something that we're going to have to work with.
Leader Camp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate all those changes. I remember when we did the design, I remember all of that. I remember being a part of it, and it has worked well for us. But at the same time, investing about $5 billion, you know, you were in transportation to come back and say, yeah, but the backlog is 500 million. So I get what we're doing. I'm just thinking we need to really prioritize it the more and really think long-term past the 10 years or how we can solve that problem. Next question is, if you go to page A62 in the budget document,
Page
I
what?
probably should save this for my beloved treasurer. I'll ask you the question. So on A62, again, if you look at the actuals for treasurer's estimates, I think the earnings in 25 was some 934 million. In 2026, some 476 million. And then this year, we're estimating 3.7 million. Is that my chairman back there laughing at me? You know, what do you think might be a reasonable estimate for 2027? If you look at for the last 2, 3, 4 years, it's definitely been more than 3.7. But every year we keep putting that number in there. And I'm sure you have a rationale. I'm just trying to get to what do you think it might be this
Which
year?
number are you looking at? I'm sorry.
looking on page A62, other state revenue, state treasurer.
That would be a really good number for the state treasurer.
I'll ask my beloved treasurer that question when he
So,
comes up.
Yeah, and I'll defer to the treasurer, but I will say from a budgeting standpoint, the way we have looked at the interest earnings, because it does fluctuate, I think if you look back, we're hesitant to look at it as a recurring revenue source, because if you look back 4 or 5 years ago, it was around $3.5 to $4 million. And so obviously our cash balances are larger, interest rates have been, so we've benefited from that. But I feel like what we've tried to do from a budgeting standpoint is only not project and spend, but only recognize what we have in hand. And so we will reevaluate that as we think about the amendment and bring some of that non-recurring money that we have in hand into the amendment to fund. But I from a budgeting standpoint, I don't want to project an amount that fluctuates so wildly. So
Thank you,
on the front
Mr.
end.
Thurman. I appreciate that.
Leader Camp.
Last question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your patience. With respect to the salary increases that's recommended for both state and higher ed employees, the rate increase is about 12.3%. Is that about right? For like group insurance, for just different things? I mean, could you just go into a little bit more depth about the salary increases, what you're proposing? How does, you know, what is the base salary based upon?
As usual, I'm going to lean on the director here in
That's
just a
fine,
moment.
yeah.
Okay. All right. On the insurance that you're asking?
Yes.
So health trend is much higher this year. And so we are
Sorry,
health trend.
health trend.
And so our Benefits Administration Division works with an actuary study each year to kind of understand that trend and how to think about insurance premiums and that kind of thing. And so they're telling us health trend is double digits, around 12%, much higher than prior years. And so that is what's built into this budget is a 12% premium increase. That will be determined later in the summer as they get more information as to how to think about that premium. But we've planned to allow for the health trend that they're seeing at this point.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Leader Camper. Next on the list, Representative Miller, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Bryson, my question is more out of curiosity, but it doesn't focus in on the slides at this point. Yesterday, the governor's state of the state, what was not in his presentation, something that this legislature has been working on for the last 7 years, and even before the governor came on the scene, the elimination of what's now 4% on grocery taxes. And I'm just curious, out of your private conversations with the governor and your public conversations during budget hearings, how extensive was that conversation about how do we, usually it says that we can't pay for it. We would not know how to recoup those dollars if we were to eliminate the 4%. But again, last year, whenever we were able to refund through excise and franchise $1 billion with a annual $400 million revenue loss based on that. And I'm just curious how and the fact that we're going to lose SNAP benefits, there's no question it's going to be cuts with that. We got the 4% still out there. It's becoming more and more difficult to feed Tennesseans who need to be fed to that degree. So I'm just curious, how extensive was the conversation between you guys? And you could even say, well, with 4%, let's reduce about 1% this budget year. Let's try to at least do that. I'm just curious. How did that conversation go?
Thank you, Representative, and I appreciate that. There's always conversation about all kinds of tax reductions. This is a conservative state where we're always looking for different ways to reduce taxes when we can. This is a budget with very little growth space in it, and every time whenever you take something away, it's a cost, right? Because you're gonna lose that funding, and so those are things that we go through every year. We go through those different conversations about all the different ways that the funds can be spent. There's a robust conversation going on now in the state about this, and I'm sure that it will play out. It will play out well, and we'll see how it plays out over the next several months.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, next on the list, I have Chairman Williams. We're going to go back to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just a couple of quick other questions. Unfortunately, Representative Miller reminded me of the F&E tax thing, and I had long since tried to forget about it. My question is the letter that was sent to the administration, did that come to revenue that started that whole process? Did that come to revenue or F&A? And can we now have a copy of that letter, since we've now spent $1 billion, $1.5 billion and $427 million recurring to see that letter? Is it now free for distribution?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not. It's a legal question. It sounds like the way you're describing it. It's a legal question that needs to be worked out with the attorneys on what the status of that letter is. So
Yeah.
That's something we can check into.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a legal binding letter. It was more of a Patriot missile across the bow. So I was wondering if somehow we could possibly get a copy of that letter. I'd love to frame it in my office. I did have a question also about treasurer's earnings. If you could share with me a little bit, because you're right. I mean, when I first got to the Tennessee General Assembly, it was not a honeypot that anyone went to. I mean, it was 5 to 6. The great year was $11 million in earnings. The last 3 years, this General Assembly, with your leadership, has spent non-recurring revenue in excess of $1.7 billion of interest earnings from the Treasurer's Office. And because it is very volatile, I understand that. My question is, how does the discussion work? I mean, do do we look at when we left here in April the 20, whatever it was last year, and then we look and see what interest earnings, do we look at that number as to what it might have been, say, December 31st, and we take a portion of what we know we've earned, or do we estimate what we think we can take in the year? I just don't know what the thinking behind that is.
It is definitely the former. We have a policy that we only budget revenues that we have as far as those earnings go. And so,
Okay.
As Director Thurman mentioned a moment ago, we have some of those earnings in this budget,
Mhm.
but we have not projected forward. And so, and so that's always one of the things in the amendment that we have to look at, because we'll have a few months more of treasurer's earnings that we will be able to look at for the amendment.
Yeah, so in round math, we may look at what it is December 31st, and we say, 80% of that number, we're going to use $472 million. Is that
You can
kinda how
make
we do it?
projections like that, but we will work with what we have actually in hand.
And
Yeah, but if you got 600 million in hand on December 31st and you say, I'm going to take 472 of that, my question is, there may be some still in hand from the time you drew a line in the sand and started adding to create a 225-page document.
Yeah, so I would say we kind of did draw a line in the sand as of, I think it was December collections, and adjusted for current year.
Mhm.
And I think, as Leader Camper mentioned on page A62, we're showing last year was 933 in actual collections. For current year, it's 475, and that's basically what we had in hand at that point when we drew the line.
Okay.
Again, concerned about, it's going to be better than that, but I don't want to project, because I trust the treasurer, but I don't want to get too far ahead of his good work there.
I love asking these questions about treasurer's earnings in his presence. It's very difficult for me not to do that. But the treasurer's been great, and I've communicated with him. But one final question. One of the things that I hear more today than I did 5 years ago as a member of this body and sitting on the finance team is what's going on with sports gambling and what it's doing to young adults in our state. I noticed that over the last several years, you've made significant investment through your department to help with sports gambling and the addiction associated with that. Is there any kind of reporting that you get back as it relates to how we expend those dollars to see if it's working, or if we need to spend more dollars? I'm a little bit concerned. I have young adults now in my not in my house, thankfully, but in my life, and I'm shocked at the number of young men and women who are doing sports wagering at a number that just boggles the mind.
And it looks like it's growing, is continuing to grow. And so I think that's going to continue to grow as well. How that is we were just talking about that as you were asking that question. We believe those numbers are in the Department of Mental Health as far as how what's being done and how successful it's being taken care of. And I think you can get that information from them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And I don't have anyone else on the list, but I do have a question. We're talking about projections. If you want to go to slide 6, this kind of goes along with this, just kind of looking ahead. If you look back there in fiscal year 25, that closing balance was $1.1 billion. And then you look for the closing balance of fiscal year 26. What can you remember where did most of that money from fiscal year 25, where did that come from? And could we see the same thing happen as we close the fiscal year 26? And when do those projections, when will we know for sure, and you're comfortable enough to say that fiscal year 26 is no longer projected, this is the actuals? What's the timing on that?
So for 25, the $1 billion that you're looking at, it's really two things. It is revenue that's come in above estimates. The large one being interest earnings. Again, think about when legislature ended and the rest of the year. So we just were afraid to project. So that gives that is part of it. And also the second piece of that is agency underspending, which is a result of we fully fund all positions, but there's turnover, there's vacancies and that kind of thing. And there's some underspending of non-payroll things. And then as Commissioner mentioned, one thing that's different this year is that we did exercise over the summer at closing to look at reserves and cleaned out about $200 million of reserves that had been stagnant, had not moved and changed, and just kind of cleaned that up. So that's a big part of that $1 billion. For 26, similar, we'll continue to look at interest earnings when we develop the amendment, and again, recognize what an amount that's not risky. And then we'll also do a projection on agency underspending. That's a little bit harder to get a beat on if we're moving fast. We don't have time to do a thorough deep dive on all that, but we try and project a level that gives us some comfort, but also know that that helps with closing if we have under collections in other areas, and so we are conservative as we think about that as well. But we'll fine tune all that as part of our thinking on the amendment.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Members, you can. Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you. On page 7, I meant to ask about this earlier. Under the reserves, you have about 200 million that you said you went back to the general fund. And I thought you said because they are no longer needed. What were you trying to convey?
They can provide more detail on this, but there are some reserves that were set up several years ago, let's say, that have the program's expired or something's happened where we can just take that whole fund. There are some reserves that have grown significantly, and they're at a place that there's more reserves than are really needed. And so we just did a deep look into those reserves, and with the idea that we're going to make sure we keep enough reserves to be able to do what the reserves were meant to do. And then when we did with that idea, we were able to pull about we felt like very comfortably, and we talked to the departments and the agencies also, and we felt like very comfortably we could pull $200 million out.
And this was across all agencies?
It was.
Okay, thank you.
It was broad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you. I have no one else on the list. So Commissioner Bryson, thank you very much. Director Thurman, and Assistant Director Schuman, thank you all for being here. Thank you for answering our questions and for your presentation. And we will see you soon, I'm sure. So thank you all very much. All right, members, I am going to ask for the Department of Treasury if they would move forward, and Treasurer Lillard and your team and your staff, you can come on up. Members, as they do come up and get situated, last week with these presentations from the treasurer and as well as TWRA was supposed to have taken place last week. And of course, because of the weather, we weren't able to do so. So those would have been separate hearings. And so we combined them all together. And so let me say, Treasurer, thank you for your patience. Thank you for waiting, as well as TWRA. We appreciate you guys letting us put you all together, and just makes it easier and a little better flow and more efficient. We'll wait till everyone transitions out, and then we will begin. Just remember, we'll control the microphone up here, and you'll see the red light come on, and you are ready to speak. If you would, please identify yourself, and when you do speak and before you do get started. And without further ado, Treasurer Lillard, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chairman Hicks. I'm David Lillard, Tennessee State Treasurer, and I appreciate this opportunity to appear before you today. With me to my left is Michael Brakebill, CFA is our Chief Investment Officer, and to my right is Jamie Wayman, CPA, that's Director of the TCRS, and to the far right there is Stephen Summerall, CEBS, who is the Assistant Treasurer for Program Services that includes the TCRS. And we appreciate the opportunity to talk to you just briefly here today. As Chairman noted, this is not our budget presentation, but we wanted to have the special opportunity to speak to the committee about a couple of areas of concern that we have and issues that we wanted you to be sure and have focused information on. And so we have a side presentation here, and starting with the TCRS, the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. On slide number 2, this gives you the total balance of not only the TCRS, but basically all funds that are under management by the Treasury Department on any given day. As you can see, This shows a running balance of $132.3 billion, almost $132.4 billion that we are responsible for either managing that money or having oversight over the management of that money in the treasurer's office on a daily basis and everything. One thing I'll note is that the Tennessee Retiree Group Trust, which is the TCRS investment mechanism, is shown here at $75.753 billion as of June 30, 2025. And Michael Brakebill told me that as of yesterday, we're at an unaudited and unofficial number of 81.068 or almost $81.1 billion in the TCRS. So we've had a roughly unaudited return of about 8.5% during the fiscal year to date, the roughly 6 months of the fiscal year to date, and have gained about $5.4 billion in asset values during that time. A good return indeed. Let's skip over to slide number 4. This shows you the two different plans that we have under the TCRS. We have the legacy plan, which was closed June 30, 2014. Anyone who was on the payroll at that date and before remained in the legacy plan. There was no change with respect to their status. On the hybrid plan, it was open July 1, 2014, and all new hires in state government, K through 12 teachers and others and non-ORP people in higher education have been in the hybrid plan since that date and everything. And this is important for several reasons, one of which is on the legacy plan, it shows that we pay about $3.4 billion a year in benefits out of that program. 92% of that money stays in Tennessee, since 92% of our retirees live in the state roughly. And of that $3.4 billion, about $2.3 billion of that comes from investment earnings earned by your Treasury Department on the world investment markets. It does not come from employee contributions or taxpayer dollars or anywhere else. So it's almost roughly two-thirds of it that is earned through investment return going forward. So that's an important thing. It also shows the number of people that are in these plans currently. And you'll note, and we'll see in some subsequent slides here, that on the legacy plan, we have 144,000 people as of June 30, 2014. We have 163,531 that are retired at that particular point. So those are important figures to know. On the next slide, slide number 5, active membership, comparing the legacy plan to the hybrid plan. And again, the hybrid is in the orange and the legacy is in the blue here. And it shows the transition that has occurred to the point that the hybrid plan for state employees has more people in it on an active basis than the legacy plan does. Of course, this is something that we anticipated at the time that we closed the legacy plan in 2014, about 11 years ago or so. On the next slide, slide number 6, this shows you again the flip side of that, because it shows you the growth in the hybrid plan, looking at it from another angle a little bit, the orange bars being the hybrid plan and the blue bars being the legacy teacher plan here. And it shows you that here in this plan also, the hybrid plan has become the larger plan, not by as much, because teachers tend to turn over less than state employees do. On slide number 7, this shows you that it talks about the top of this slide that Treasury has earned $83.7 billion since 1978 in the TCRS retirement fund in an aggregate basis. And it goes over the point that I made a minute ago, that over 2/3 of the amount of the retirement benefits we pay comes from investment dollars. And it shows it in that graph down there with the $100 bill that's been divided up, and shows that very realistically and all. So from that standpoint, I want to point out that this is one aspect of something that your Treasury Department studies, worries about, and deals with on a daily basis. And I'm talking 7 days a week, because we have to earn roughly two thirds of every dollar that we pay out in retirement benefits. If we can't do that in the Treasury Department for whatever reason, then we have a situation where that would have to be made up at some point, either by taxpayer dollars or by employee contributions, neither one of which places we wish to go. So from that standpoint, I just want everybody to focus on the fact that I think a lot of people look at it and say, well, we're 100% funded roughly, which is what we are, and that's a very good statistic. Puts us in the top 3 state pension plans in the nation. It's a great place to be. But it also means that we have the obligation to earn the earnings that are necessary to support this. And it's not like we have money laying around that has not been committed, because every dollar of the fund is committed to earn other dollars to create the investment return to pay those benefits and also to do other operational matters for the pension fund. Again, some people looking at it from the outside think, well, we just have a lot of money laying around, but that they may have a lot of money, but every dollar of it is committed to some purpose and has to be had for that purpose. All right, next slide, slide number 8, the actuarial valuation. This is the actuarial data according to the Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement 68 for our plans and all. And it shows here that the plans are well funded, like I talked about a minute ago, essentially 100% plus funded. The state employee hybrid plan being 99% funded there. And the aggregate of local governments that's shown in the right-hand column, this data for the local governments is as of June 30, 2024 is about 100% funded. So that's a good status, a very, very good status, and one that we're all very proud of. And we're proud of the General Assembly having a very reasoned approach to legislation that's passed with respect to the pension fund and other things, because that's what enables us to manage it so well and produce the results that we do, is your good farsighted leadership in those respects. On slide number 9, the estimated savings for the state employees, this is for state employees only, for the hybrid plan versus the legacy plan from 2015 to 2025, is we estimate the state has saved about $1.484 billion over that period of time by switching to the hybrid plan. So that's an illustration of some of the benefit that has occurred. And many of you some of you who are here at the time that we changed back in 2014 will recall that one of the motivating factors to change to the hybrid plan was that the costs of it were getting out of line. We were at a point where it was required 15.02% of payroll for F&A, for instance, that percentage of payroll to be paid into the plan each year, and it was trending upwards. And we also had a situation where all of the risk was on the employer because there was no employee contribution for state employees in that particular plan. So it has changed in the hybrid plan, and I would suggest to you that we have achieved some good results for everyone involved, including the retirees themselves, because it does no good to have a retirement system that is not sustainable from an employee's point of view. You have to have one that's sustainable over a long period of time, because if it's not, then in the end, it's not really going to do the employee any good. If you look on slide number 10, this is a subject that comes up from time to time when there's people bring up, well, why don't we just at some point switch back to the hybrid plan, rather than having rather to the legacy plan, from the hybrid plan. If you did that, the total cost would be about $24.3 billion. That's what the slide illustrates for you. So from that standpoint, that's for state employees only here in this particular case. But it shows you again that the necessity of continuing on a forward basis with the hybrid plan itself and all. All right, on slide number 11, I think Chairman Williams and others have mentioned this earlier, the extraordinary contributions that the legislature and the governor put into the legacy plans for the last 3 years or so here. And it shows you on each one of those here that we've earned 26.6% on it, 36.8%, and 29.9%. So that was, in my view, a very wise move by the General Assembly. We've had some rough times in the marketplace, so that has helped in that regard. The more money you have to invest, the the more likely you're going to make a return that's sufficient for the purposes for which it's being held. So from that standpoint, what the General Assembly did in that regard, again, is a good example of farsighted pension leadership. On slide number 12, this shows the long-term nature of a pension plan. This is the teacher plan you're looking at here, the legacy teacher plan. And it's showing you here the total present value of benefits in the orange line over a period of time running from 2025 out to 2085. And then the blue line is the total number of participants. And you can see the relationship between the two. You can also see that from where we are in 2025, it's going to be well into 2055 to 2065 before the teacher plan ceases to be a large liability to state government. So that's a point to consider. In other words, pension plans are very long-term liability issues when you talk about planning and managing the liability stream. And it shows you, because of the longevity of participants and all that, you will have that situation exist for quite a while here. If you look on slide number 13, this is in effect the same data for the legacy state pension plan. The curves are a little different here because the ages of state employees are different as a group than they are generally for teachers, teachers being generally a younger group overall. But again, it shows you here that from where we are today in 2025, if you look forward in time, it's going to be on to between 2055 and 2065 before that ceases to be what I would regard as a major liability of the state. So we have to do what we do and continue doing it, not only over the shorter period, but over an elongated period of time in order to achieve the result that we all want everyone to have, and that is to pay 100% of the promised pension benefit that we have for each employee. All right, on slide number 14, this is just a reminder. This is what we call the nominal performance of the TCRS. In other words, how much did we earn in this particular year and then the next year and the next year? It shows you the cyclical nature, the volatile nature of the investment markets in which we operate, because you can see this line goes all over the place, from being negative in some years to being highly positive in other years. But it shows you the difficulty that is presented there by that. And that's how the world in which we operate. On slide number 15, this illustrates the stabilization reserve for the hybrid plan. This is one of the better features that we have for the hybrid plan, in my view, is that the difference between the 4% statutory rate that the state pays in for the hybrid plan, less what the actuarial requirement is to fund that plan, that difference or delta between those two goes into a savings account called the stabilization reserve. And it shows that over the period of time we've been maintaining this reserve, starting with the year ending June 30, 2018 through June 30, 2025, that we've earned in the state plan $318.7 million and have as the corpus of that fund, that amount. And the teachers have $320.3 million. So that's a good reserve to have for the hybrid plan. We don't have a stabilization reserve for the legacy plan, but we do for the hybrid plan. On slide number 16, this shows, again, part of the dynamics of the hybrid plan that's been in force for 11 years now. And that is, as you'll recall, the state pays in 4% to the hybrid defined benefit portion of that particular plan. The state also pays 5% of payroll into a 401k account for each employee. And that's the effects of this are shown here because the asset growth that's occurred in the 401k plans, it gives the employee the opportunity to manage themselves more of their pension assets and have more portability with respect to that, et cetera, than you have in the legacy plan, for instance, where there's not anything paid into a DC plan device. But it's been good to see the growth in the 401k plan assets for that over that period of time. On slide number 17, this illustrates another component of the hybrid plan and the legacy plan in today's world that we take very seriously in the Treasury Department. That is participant financial education. We work very hard at this. We have a whole division under Ashley Neighbors, Assistant Treasurer, that works in this area, among other things. And we did in the last fiscal year, ending June 30, 2025, 20,830 one-on-one individual counseling sessions with people who are licensed personnel, talking to state employees, K through 12 teachers, higher ed employees, et cetera, and local government employees that are in the plans that we have. We had 752 group educational meetings. And we also have a number of people, a growing number of people in the plans in terms of retirement readiness that are achieving a situation where they can look forward to what we call a lifetime income score of 100% or better. That is, they're on either at or on track to, by the time of their retirement, have in between their TCRS benefit, their 401k benefit, and other potentially other assets they might have be able to retire at an income that is the same as or greater than what they earned as an employee. So we have, according to this data, we have 28.9% of the people in the plans overall that are at that. We have some 38.10% in addition to that are above 70% on that track. And we hope they'll get to the point where they're at 100% track. So from that standpoint on the TCRS, I'll just close by saying again, our success with respect to the TCRS as one of the most successful states and governments anywhere in this country or in the world for that matter is based, in my view, to a large extent on the wisdom of our General Assembly and our governors. And I say that over time without regard to partisan matters. It's a bipartisan thing. Every governor and every General Assembly since at least 1972, and perhaps before that, since 1972, has fully funded 100% of the actuarial requirement in the budget that was passed in that year. And as I said, that's a bipartisan thing. It's happened regardless of whoever's in control at a particular point. And it shows the great judgment, I think, that Tennesseans in general have, but particularly our General Assembly and its leadership, and stretches all the way back to the days in the 1970s of people like John Bragg, who was chairman of the House Finance Committee back in the 1970s, Senator Leonard Donovan, a Republican of Millington. John Bragg was a Democrat from Murfreesboro. They led the finance operation at that particular point in time, and they did a good job because they made a lot of good long-term decisions that enabled us today to take that ball and run it further down the field, if you will, and do what we're doing today. So, and you can imagine, you know, to every retiree in the state, what it means to get that check every month from the TCRS and have that income to support them. So, all right, if I could, I'd like to skip here quickly to the Criminal Injuries Compensation Fund. This is a fund that we manage and also administer in the Treasury Department. We pay victims of crime who have suffered terrible losses through crime in Tennessee, and pay for things like hospitals bills, provider bills, doctor bills, burial expenses. We work a lot with funeral directors who are burying victims of homicide, things like that across the state. This is a really good program. It's partially funded by federal funding and also by state funding, but we did want you to just to have a moment to focus with us on the issue of the funding for this program, particularly the state revenue portion of it. You can see here on slide number 19 where the state revenue is shown on the blue line, the lower line there, and the claims payments that are paid out are shown on the red line above that. It shows you, number one, that state revenue has not changed really. It's kind of gone down a little bit, but it hasn't, while many other things have inflated and moved up in terms of the nominal amounts of the dollars, that has not happened with respect to this. And the primary source of state revenue is a levied privilege tax, which is outlined in the TCA, and it's experienced a decline over the past decade. If you look at slide number 20, we look at it from a little bit different angle here with the Criminal Injuries Compensation Fund. It shows you the CIC privilege tax above there, that privilege tax that I mentioned, it's been going down. And you also have probation fees that are in the green line there. They're at a much lower level. They're much less significant amount of income that goes into this particular fund. And then we have bond forfeitures at the very bottom down there and all that. But despite the fact that claims continue to go up in this fund and all, we have a situation where revenues are at best static and sometimes going down depending on what area you're talking about. If you look at the federal side of this, on slide number 21, we can look at, it shows the amount of the VOCA grant that's federally administered through the U.S. Department of Justice grant. This grant pays about 36% of the fund revenue each year comes from the federal government grant. And what the federal government does is they reimburse us for a percentage of the amount that we pay out in state dollars and do so in arrears. It's at least 2 years behind. It's gotten a little further than that on some occasions and everything. And it's a helpful fund. But the point is that really to carry this particular program, you have to have state funding to do that and all. And if you look at the overall ending fund balance for this particular thing on slide number 22 on this fund, it shows you that we started off in FY 2025 here, and we go looking forward in time, we project out that it will be a situation where we will go to the point where it's negative in 2028. So from that standpoint, there's a need for us all to think about the sources of the revenues that are collected for the fund. This fund, and this one and the EMIF fund that's next, but this one particularly, one thing that we have as an issue here is that it's collected at the local level and then remitted to the Department of Revenue, and then the revenue is turned over to us in Treasury. As a result of that, some of the jurisdictions, local jurisdictions, do a really diligent job of trying to collect the privilege tax, for instance, that funds the CIC. Others do not, and for whatever reason that might be. And that's an issue because that's one thing that contributes to the declines that we're looking at here. And in order to, have a situation where we know exactly where the issues are in that regard in our revenue stream going forward, we have legislation that we are probably going to bring forward this year to start a pilot program of looking at transparency issues for collection of state fees like this and the privilege tax at the local level. In other words, looking at the differences between jurisdictions and making that information public, if you will. So that might help us in that regard and all. The next thing I just want to mention briefly in closing here is the EMIF fund, the Electronic Monitoring Agency Fund. This fund has two components. One is the interlock program, the DUI interlock program that we administer in Treasury. The other component of this is a component that deals with other types of monitoring activity that is administered by the Criminal Justice Grant Program Office in F&A. And it deals with things like transdermal patches, ankle monitors, things like that are under that side of the particular program. The bottom line, if you will, it shows the revenue sources here on slide 24 for the EMIF. There is a higher level of collection in the EMIF fund because, among other things, in order to continue to have your driver's license, you have to pay your court fees in these particular funds that are funding this particular program. So it results in a higher level of collections, if you will. The slide on slide 25 explains that about 70 to 80% of the conviction fees generated by a county are used here in this particular fund. And there are individual discrepancies in how well each county collects. On slide number 26, one thing that's demonstrated here is in the little table under aggravated assault and domestic assault here is these fees that we talk about that fund the EMIF fund, they're only levied on convictions, not on on arrests. So you have a situation where, like on the first line there, under aggravated assaults in 2021, we had 11,055 arrests, but we only had 2,678 convictions. So from the standpoint of how much you're going to collect to fund your program, you've got that dichotomy that you're dealing with there. So this slide on 27 is just simply a bar chart that shows what I've been talking about revenue versus payments here. And it shows, of course, that payments generally exceed revenues in this fund. And we also have included on slide number 28, we talk about the fact that we've included in our budget request for this year for Treasury request for 1.2 million non-recurring to plug the hole, if you will, for this fund for this particular year. So that'll be coming up again when we talk about that in terms of our budget going forward. One other thing I just wanted to mention right quick, since Leader Camper brought it up and others did just a minute ago about Treasurer's earnings. Treasurer's earnings is a very interesting area, to say the least, because it varies greatly. If you look at over time, like right now, I didn't look today, but for the 10-year Treasury bond rate's about 4.25% today. It's been up much higher than that in recent times and all that. But you remember back in March of 2020 to about March of 2022, that's an era that in the investment business and what I do and everything, we call it the cash is trash era, because at that time you could put money in the bank and you would get almost nothing for it, And in fact, in the State Pool Investment Fund, which is our modality for earning Treasurer's earnings, i.e. the idle cash of the state, plus the LGIP, the local government investment pool, where we do that for local governments as part of a pooled fund. We had a serious set of meetings in this era about what are we going to do if rates go negative. If you look in Professor Baum and others who study economics know that during that time period in Germany and other jurisdictions, rates actually went negative on shorter term money. So, what would the state do if we had a situation where it never quite got to negative? I think it got down to 10 basis points, i.e. 0.1% was the lowest it got. So I slept a lot better after it started going back up again after a period of time. But we endured that for nearly 2 years, is my point. So to Leader Camper's good point that she raised, and I do agree with what the F&A people told you, that they treat it as non-recurring revenue, which they look at on a hindsight basis, because then they know what they've actually earned and what they got in the bank. They're not spending a projected earning going forward. And I do agree with that philosophy, because it's almost impossible to predict it. This year's earnings, we have somewhere in the area of $400 million that we've earned in the first 6 months or so of this fiscal year. And that would suggest that, if you could extrapolate that out, it probably would be at least 700 million that we'd earn over the entire fiscal year when we come to June 30 of 2026. But we don't know what's going to happen between now and then, and a lot of things can happen. And it's also dependent on one other thing, and I'll just close in saying this, that it's also dependent on how much money you have in the bank to earn, the principal on which you're earning your money. It's not just the interest rate, it's how much you have that you can apply that to. And two things happened during the era of the largest amounts of Treasurer's earnings. One is our state economy produced greater sales and use tax revenue and general tax revenue overall than it had historically, if you want to look back over time, and on a more regularized basis, if you will, a more continuous basis. And that gave us a base to earn money on that was a pretty constant base at a higher level and all that. The second thing was that when I came to Treasury in 2009, the federal government, on any payment that we got from the federal government, they worked really, really hard to be sure that that payment that we got from them came into us at a time when it was due to be gone out the other side of the door, if you will, whether it was provider payments in the Medicaid program, the TennCare program, or whether some other federally funded program that we're doing. They wanted to make sure that we didn't have an opportunity to earn money on their money. So we just had it maybe one day at best, is all we had. They changed that during the period of the downturn that occurred early in the Biden administration. They did change that. So we started carrying much larger cash balances as a result. And we have ARPA funds that we're spending the tail end of now. We still have a significant amount of ARPA money on hand right now, but that money will tail out at some point, and we'll be back to those old days, and we'll see what the U.S. Treasury Department does about the stream of payments. But I would bet that they will go back to looking at it on the basis of making sure we're not earning money on their money, and we'll be back to looking at what we can earn on our money. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Treasurer Lillard. Very good presentation. And we do have several folks on the list. I'll ask everyone to please be as precise as you can with not only your questions, but your answers as well. Let's begin with Representative Shaw. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think you answered my question. I'll be very brief. I think you answered my question. I'm one of the few people on this committee that's going to be very interested in TCR this year. But I think you answered the question because I really wanted to get some idea between the hybrid and the legacy plan, but I think you answered that. If you want to briefly touch on it again, that'll be fine. But thank you so much.
I just want to comment quickly, something I didn't say was that we have information that shows that you can, with proper investments, you can earn as much in the hybrid plan as a state employee or a K-12 teacher over the lifetime of a career as you would in the legacy plan. It's not really that appreciable a difference in the two in terms of what you would get out of them as an employee.
Just keep up the good work.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
thank you, Pastor.
All right. Thank you. Speaker Zachary, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Treasurer, for your hard work, stewardship of our dollars, tax dollars, and your presentation. Just a quick question about crypto. I know we've talked about this a little bit in the past. Just what are your thoughts about, especially now, I actually looked before I asked the question, with crypto, with Bitcoin down to 75, Ethereum at 2.2, Solana at 100. What are your thoughts about any kind of Bitcoin reserve or taking a small step into the crypto space, especially with the prices look like they've bottomed out to where they are now? Just kind of give your thoughts and philosophy on that, if you don't mind.
I'm glad that we didn't buy it with state dollars when it was high, No, I think, it's one of those things where if the General Assembly makes the decision that they're going to set aside money out of the budget to invest in a particular thing, crypto being the case we're talking about here, then certainly we'll do that, in the Treasury Department. I think that needs to come from appropriated dollars. We all time get questions from people about, well, why don't you invest the TCRS dollars in that, or why don't you invest this other set of dollars that you've got, the SPIF funds in that? And I don't think is an appropriate investment for that. But again, if there's money appropriated for it, that's a different matter, and it's coming from a judgment of those who control the budget. So,
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Treasurer Lillard, for your presentation today, and also always being willing to hear me out on my terrible ideas. But I do think I did have a question. One of the slides you showed was the post-employment retirement funds and what happened with those over time. Speaker Zachary and I were sitting up here talking about what 2008 looked like compared to 2008, 2009 looked like compared to what we've been able to see before. I guess my question is that in the event and something like that were hopefully would never happen again, but if it were to happen again, what happens to the benefits if we have a reduction in the asset value of those? That nothing happens to benefits. We just continue to pay that we do, and then we supplant them with non-recurring dollars in the instance that we need to, or how does that work?
Well, that's one of my points that you're pointing out, Chairman Williams, quite rightly, is that the the fact that we're 100% funded in the TCRS, yes, we are 100% funded today and everything, but that is an economic construct, okay?
Yeah.
It's an actuarial determination based on the fact of the value of our assets versus the liabilities that we have.
Mhm.
And if you look at that, I was looking for the slide, but we've got, tens of billions of dollars of liability in this plan
Mhm.
and in both these plans. And if something happens where there's a precipitous decline in market values, then we won't be 100% funded anymore. We will be something less than that. And that's my point. When you take that and you combine it with the charts that I showed that showed the descending curves on it, and I pointed out it would take to 2055 to 2065, that era, to get to the point where the liability is not a significant liability of the state. We've made a hard promise to retirees on the one hand that we're going to make sure these benefits are there for them. And that extends all the way out into that tail way out there. And so we've got to be able to make sure that we can earn enough to defray all those liabilities. And so that's an issue.
Is the liability less for those hybrid employees to the state than the Team Act employees?
It's less for than the legacy plan.
The legacy,
Yeah,
I'm
the
sorry.
legacy plan employees. Yes, in the sense that from several different senses. You may remember I said earlier that for the legacy plan, one of the issues with it was that there was no risk sharing in that plan. State employees did not contribute to it. All the risk was on the employer, i.e. on the taxpayer. And you can, whatever view one may have about it, is that you need to have a balancing of the risk, if you will. So in the hybrid plan, the employee has paid in. They pay in 5% plus, in that. So so there's a sharing of risk in that plan as opposed to the legacy plan, which is just there's no contribution by employees.
Yeah. Thank you, Treasurer. Appreciate your efforts.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Next on the list, Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Treasurer, for your presentation. I had a question about whether members can participate both in the 401k and the 457B program, or must they choose between one or the other?
Well, you can do the 457 and the 401k. There are rules that apply to that and everything, but you can put money in both plans. And I've done that before myself, use more than one plan that the state sponsors. And we'd be happy to hook you up with Ashley Neighbors, who's here today, our assistant treasurer in this area. And she'll be happy to come by and talk to you about that and go through it with you, because I think it'd be good for you to know about that.
Yes, sir. I'm in the 401k, but I just have always wondered about the 457B also.
Yeah.
But
You're talking about the 457 plan. There's
sorry,
another one called 403B, which is an entirely different animal, but 457 and the 401k are the two we're talking about here.
But the match is only for the 401k.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Treasurer. Thank you, Chairman.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For time's sake, I was going to pass, but since you've given us all this information, what can you do to help Social Security out of DC? If we had two extra zeros to all these numbers here, can you go fix Social Security? I ask that rhetorically. Thank you, Chairman.
All right, I'll just quickly point out that that's one of the other little issues that we deal with here, because if you look at the website of the Social Security Administration, ssa.gov, and I haven't been out there lately, so I might be corrected on this, but there's a statement on there from the trustees of Social Security that at some point in the 2030s, they, based on current actuarial assumptions, they will have to reduce the benefit. Of course, Congress can fix that in the meantime, and it has happened before that there was a fix. Another thing that we have that we deal with is the debt of the United States of America. We're over 35 trillion right now in debt owed by the United States, and that is greater than 100% of our GDP. And, it's not a good situation to be in. So these curves that I showed you earlier, running all the way out to 2065 and everything, we're going to be operating within that space along with that debt of the United States of America. And so we need to be careful what we do with respect to this plan if we're going to make good on our 100% promise to everybody. And I think we will, but, I just want everybody to understand the rules of the road going forward. Mhm.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate, all that you do and your great stewardship. And, of course, with you being from Shelby County, that's expected anyway. So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Treasurer, I do want to know, how does the devaluation of the dollar affect what you're doing?
Well, we're fortunate in the sense that we, all of our liabilities, the promises we've made to people for pensions are denominated in dollars. They're not in euros. They're not in some other currency out there. So it's dollars that we have promised to pay to people. We have a large percentage of our investments in dollars, but we do have, transcurrency risk in our system because we invest in Europe and we invest in other markets. Right, Michael? So, we do have euro and denominated investments and other types of investments. And when you start converting those back to dollars, you have currency risk. So that's another risk that we're managing. So it's something to keep up with.
Yeah, and I think that's important to note, as we monitor things that are coming out of DC and how, the dollar is being affected globally. And it's important to note that everything touches us too. Right. And so I'm glad to know that you're on top of that. Last thing, what's the solution for the CIC funds? Is it for those local payments to come directly to the Treasury or to continue in the layered pass through that is happening in now, or what's the solution for that?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think the first thing that probably needs to be done is there needs to be some public reporting of the payments that are coming out of every jurisdiction in the state, so that people focus on it. Right now it's not really out there anywhere. It's public record, but it's not really in anybody's mind. So I think we're going to try to move the transparency up a notch or two on this so that people can see who's able to collect it and who's not, and why there are differences and all the rest. And that'll help us deal with some of the issues and problems.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next on the list, Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Treasurer.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Leader.
your presentation. And I know you did say this was not your budget presentation, but I had a question about a line item in the budget. It's $10 million that's going to TCRS, and you're saying that we are at 100% funded.
Yeah.
And I was just curious about why we were putting $10 million.
No, I agree with what the F&A people answered your question correctly in saying that is the incremental increase that our actuary believes is necessary to keep the plan at the funded level we're at now. If you want to put it simplistically, that's what it is. In other words, every year you would look in the budget and you'll see an incremental increase occur for the contributions of the state to that. And the same thing's true for the teacher plan and all the rest. So that's what that is. And that's what happens every year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. And that's all I have on the list. So Treasurer Lillard, thank you and
Thank
your
you so
staff
much,
for
Chairman
being
and
here.
members,
Thank
for
you.
your
Very good
time.
information. All right, we will go ahead and ask TWRA to go ahead and come up to the front. And we do have with us Deputy Director Frank Fiss, as well as Director of Legislative and External Affairs, Blair Beatty. And this is the overview of Lake Halford. So we'd like to thank you all for being here. We will control your microphone. So once you see it turn red, you are ready to go. So without further ado, thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Chairman and members. Good to see you all. Blair Beatty, Legislative Director, and of course, Deputy Director Frank Fiss, who also happens to be a former Chief of Fisheries. So he is extremely knowledgeable and extremely excited to talk to you today about Lake Halford.
All right. Thank you, Blair. Again, Frank Fiss, Deputy Director. So this is our third fiscal year of jurisdiction over Lake Halford. And we've been developing the program steadily, and we're pretty much at capacity at what we're doing there. It is very multi-use area. It's a little out of our wheelhouse a little bit, and then we have swimming areas and marinas. We got the authority to manage those things, and we're doing that. Some of the accomplishments that our staff noted this year was that they've done a lot of work on the dam to keep it safe, had it inspected. They've been working on some riprap problems. They have to renovate those swimming beaches every year. But the thing I want to harp on the most is the work they're doing on the fish populations. They're doing a lot of supplemental feeding because this is a Bildance signature lake. We're trying to make it, we're intensively managing it to make it the best it can be. And reports are that from a quality fish perspective, people are catching huge crappie and huge largemouth bass. So it's been turned around pretty well. We're proud of that, and we're looking forward to offering that going forward. We also did some other structural work with our fencing and signs and such, but pretty much lake management as usual. Our budget for FY25, which is why we're here, we budgeted about $768,000 to manage the lake. We expended about $435,000. The difference there was about $300,000 that we had set aside for, we had budgeted for maintenance that did not get done. That was the huge parking lot had to get renovated and re-asphalted. That got done in this fiscal year. We carried it forward. So that was our budget, and our revenue was very similar to what we saw in FY24. We again collected about $25,000 worth of annual fees from visitors. We had $33,000 in marina fees and $108,000 in one-time dock permits. And I'll just conclude to remind you that we don't receive state appropriations to maintain this lake. Based on the revenue that we're seeing, we're going to continue to rely on our balance of the wildlife fund and any additional license sales that we have for providing good fishing to manage this lake and others across the state.
All right, thank you very much. And members, do we have any questions to our presenters? I do have one, I guess, just a brief question. So where do we go from here? I guess we see the accomplishments of fiscal year 25, but talking about fiscal year 27, what are we seeing coming down the pike? Could you speak a little bit about even finishing up fiscal year 26 as well? What are some of the big projects? What are still some of the big issues that we can expect to hear some good results from?
Okay, yes. So as I mentioned, in FY26, we did complete the parking lot renovation. That I believe is the last piece that makes it all completely upgraded to meet the Bildance Signature Lake standard. And that's what we're going for. Now we'll work with the Department of Tourism to get the signage up to make it, which I don't think any of the signs have been put up yet, but they're ready to go on. I keep hearing that they're ready to go to have a high quality sign so you've arrived somewhere when you get to all these signature lakes. So that is one thing I'm looking forward to in FY26. And FY27, I would say we will maintain intensive management for the fishery because we're still trying to develop that population. Hopefully we get to a point where we could tail off on that and have the population maintain itself. But I would expect to go back down to a budget 450 to 400, I don't know, maybe 500,000 at some point in the next 5 years there, but it shouldn't grow again like it did for this maintenance work.
Okay, thank you. Further discussions or questions for Lake Alfred and for TWRA? All right. I need to speak faster. Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to say, you mentioned crappie. He's over here drooling at the mouth. I love it. But you didn't say anything about the Asian carbon. That used to be an issue years ago and a lot of concern around it.
So, yes, the invasive silver and black carp are still in the Mississippi River reproducing. Fortunately for Tennesseans, they are not reproducing in the Tennessee Cumberland systems to the point where they're any kind of problem at all. They are still up. They are still present in the lower reservoirs like Kentucky and Barkley, but they have not reached a nuisance problem population levels in the reservoirs upstream. So the work that's been ongoing, removing the carp and working with the barriers at Barkley and other places across the basin has certainly helped stay those fish where they're at. And there are no invasive carp in Lake Hawker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Representative Capley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The invasive carp situation is kind of weird for me. Me and my brother bow fish at night, and they're in the Tennessee River. I missed the state record by 4 pounds. They're huge, so we could talk about that if you'd like sometime. They are quite fun. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. That's all the folks I have on the list. Anyone else seeing none, hearing none? Thank you all very much. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you all,
Chairman,
for your patience as well today. All right, without objection, we are now back in session. That completes our calendar for today. Do we have any further business coming before the committee? Hearing none and seeing none, without objection, we stand adjourned.